Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest Paddock Pass podcast. We're talking on the eve, well, almost on the eve of the Aragon Grand Prix, the next installment of 2025 MotoGP. I'm Adam Wheeler, and we're going to be going through a few discussion points, a few hot topics in the World Championship today. I'm joined by David Emmett. How are you doing, Dave?
All good, all good.
Packing again?
Yes, and unfortunately I won't be going on a motorbike. I'm so, Aragon. Also, I'm not bringing my wife with me, which is terrible, which is absolutely heartbreaking. So, no, it didn't work out this time. So, one of my favourite
GPs.
GPs
In your house.
I will have two Petes in my house. Yes, I don't know how I'm going to distinguish between them, except one of them is much taller and much more Dutch.
Are you staying 2 hours away from the track, or 3 or 4?
Apparently 35 minutes, but that's what Google Maps says.
Well, knowing the way you drive, that's another hour added on. So best of luck. Is there any excuse for the reason why Mrs. Emmett is not making the trip to Aragon?
Logistics.
Fair enough. Neil Morrison as well. Neil, have you been home at all?
I've been home the last 2 days out. Yeah. And I must say I'm feeling it. Between races, holidays, visiting family after Silverstone, it's been a wild ride. But yeah, nice to not be traveling to an airport this week, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. The Aragon Grand Prix for Neil and I, being based in Barcelona, means like a 3-hour drive. And one of the reasons why Dave is so effusive about this particular Grand Prix is because, well, it's in the middle of nowhere, so you do get less people around. But then also it's in a rather beautiful landscape, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of very arid. In fact, years ago, Michael Scott compared it to the high veld of South Africa near Joburg. It's very dry. It's quite arid. It's quite rocky, and it has sort of little nooks and crannies which are where the rivers flow, which is all green. Lots of wildlife. Fantastic place for hiking. Fantastic place for mountain biking. Fantastic place for riding motorbikes off-road. Fantastic place for riding motorbikes on-road as well. So, although not this weekend. This weekend there will be a lot of police around because it's a fantastic place to be riding motorbikes on the road. But otherwise, no, it's great. I actually went there years and years ago before there was even a racetrack there, and absolutely loved it and was delighted to go back.
Motorland Aragon is an acquired taste. We've only had 3 nationalities win at the circuit since its first Grand Prix in 2010. Who was the first winner? Anyone want to venture a guess?
Casey Stoner.
Yes.
Is that what you're about to say, Dave? Or is
I literally yes, because I remembered it. Because I remember, if I remember correctly, it was 2010. And Valentino Rossi had a terrible race, and we were hanging around outside. It was the debriefs. It was back at the time when the debriefs were all either between the trucks or in hospitalities, and we were all hanging around. And the Yamaha's PR person kept on popping out saying, "Valentino is in a technical meeting. He'll be out in a moment." And I think we waited for about an hour, and then he eventually turned up and told us how very displeased he was with how things were going.
It took him an hour to work that out. Goodness. He was admitting to the media.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, it took him no time at all to work that out. It just took him an hour to make his displeasure extremely clear to Yamaha's technicians. That was also by then, because 2010 he'd already handed in his notice and said that he was off to Ducati. So, and that was also the point at which Casey Stoner finally found a fix. I think they raised his seat something like 1 centimetre or even 2 centimetres, the rear of the bike about 2 centimetres, and he went on to win about three of the last races on the Ducati that year.
I mean, an argument that Motorland Aragon is a rider's circuit lies in the fact that Stoner won the first one and then went back the following year and did the same on a Honda. And of course, in recent years, it's been something of a playground for Marc Marquez, with the most Grand Prix victories at the venue, those kind of fast left-hand corners playing right into his hands. It was perhaps notorious for the distinct lack of grip in 2024. I don't remember any other track on the calendar in that particular campaign where riders were grumbling so much about the lack of adhesion. I don't think we've had a resurfacing job, have we? So this could be almost a similar kind of scenario to what we had 12 months ago.
Yeah, it could be interesting because I think we've only gone to Aragon in the past in September, or in the COVID years. Maybe it was the start of October. It was a bit later in 2020, I seem to recall. And we're obviously going at the start of June. It's really hot in Spain at the moment, or in this part of Spain. And I think during the afternoons, we could be looking at temperatures of 34, 35 degrees. So it could be nice and slippery and low on grip, which you would have to say would play into the hands of a certain someone that's been successful there in the past.
Marc Marquez winning last year, Dave, on a 2-year-old bike, but then Motorland was also a significant place for Pecco Bagnaia. Could this be quite a momentous occasion if Pecco can strike back and maybe sort of, for some reason or another, post a result over his teammate?
Well, I mean, yeah, theoretically, Scarlett Johansson could be phoning me any moment now, but that's about as likely. This is Marc Marquez's track. Also, it's low grip. Also, it's a track where you need a lot of front end confidence because you're on the side of the tire so much. You're using the front of the tire, the front of the bike to turn it so much, and I think that is going to be a big problem for Pecco Bagnaia. Bagnaia does not have any confidence in the front end of his Ducati, and until he gets that back, he's not going to be able to go fast. So I think he's in trouble. As for how the track, especially if the track is a little bit greasy, it's a little bit dirty and dusty. I seem to remember last year because I think they resurfaced it, and then there'd been massive rainstorms, and there was still lots of dirt lying around. So there was lots of dirt on the track, and the track never really properly cleaned up. So yeah, I think it's going to be dry this year, so it shouldn't be so greasy, shouldn't be so slippery. But still, it's not a good. It's just. I don't think this is going to be the track where Pecco finds his form again.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, obviously it's been a good track for Marc in the past with his winning record here, but last year he didn't just win his first ever treble. I think he ended his 1,043 day wait for a Premier Class win. He was on pole by like 8.5 tenths of a second, which in MotoGP is pretty rare, and just underscored how dominant he was that particular weekend. So it's difficult to look beyond him, but then we are looking at a situation where MotoGP's had 5 different winners on the bounce. We are going through quite an interesting spell, you would say, with a couple of things coming up and a few unexpected results recently. In Silverstone, I definitely don't think we would have been predicting a Bezzecchi, Zarco, Marquez podium going into the event. So I don't know, the recent issues that Ducati seem to have been having with the GP25, I'm slightly optimistic that this could be another weekend which is which doesn't quite follow the plan.
Alex Marquez, though, because it's a fantastic track for him. I think he got one of his first podiums on the Honda in 2020, I want to say. So, yeah, and he's on the GP24, the bike that is really good around there and really should have, could have won. I mean, it was the second best bike last year, behind Marc Marquez. Pecco was having a really, really good race until the clash with Alex Marquez. So yeah, I think you have to keep an eye on Alex Marquez. Marc is going to be there, but I think Alex is going to be there as well. I fear we are in for a return, for normal service to be resumed.
Well, also, could we look at a 4th Yamaha pole position in a row? I mean, it's 10 years since Yamaha won at Motorland, thanks to Jorge Lorenzo. And there's been, a diverse spread, I guess you could say, of manufacturers succeeding there. I mean, we've had Suzuki, we've had Honda the last 3 years, Ducati, of course. But I think, like Neil pointed out, we are in a bit of a strange sort of phase of MotoGP at the moment, where there obviously is this background of dominance, of one predominant brand excelling, but there are these kind of flashpoints and weirdo things happening. So I think Motorland, due to the grip, could throw up some more surprises.
To get my nerdy hat on, Ad, I'm going to have to correct you and say Yamaha's last success was actually in the Teruel GP in 2020 when Franco Morbidelli won. It wasn't Jorge Lorenzo.
Okay.
But this has historically been arguably Fabio Quartararo's weakest track. He openly admits that he hates the place. Has
treated badly as well. I think he's still got sort of scars on his chest from that crash. Was that also 2020? Was that 22, 23? I forget.
Yeah. Openly admits that he doesn't like the place, and it is going to be very low grip. And we had very, very low grip situation in Argentina, and that's a track that Fabio never really has gelled with either. And that that weekend didn't go to plan, so it's tough to see it's tough to see Yamaha being in there in the fight. I think Rins was in the top 10 last year, but like 39 seconds off the win. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if Fabio can keep his qualifying run going.
Aprilia. How do we feel about Aprilia? I mean, Marco Bezzecchi won last time out.
Well,
we've seen Aprilia do well in Argentina on a greasy track, and again, it's quite a flowing track. So.
Well, we'll get onto Aprilia in a moment, because obviously there's a bigger topic of conversation surrounding the Italians. But I also don't think things bode terribly well for KTM. I mean, yes, Maverick Viñales was able to make a big step forward with the RC16 in Argentina based on his balance setting of the bike, but Silverstone was pretty bad. And, if Aragon might have heat compared to, the Grand Prix of the United Kingdom, but, if it doesn't really have any grip, then it could be sort of another long weekend of strange, puzzled faces from the KTM riders in their media debriefs. Perhaps it's significant as well that the next one-day test of the season will be happening on the Monday. Maybe a good venue for KTM to try and get their head around how they use that Michelin rear tyre. But, just on Quartararo, Dave, I mean, was that chest injury when he ran into the back of Marc Marquez in 22, or when the marshal decided to dump him off the scooter, trying to take him back to the pit lane?
I'm not sure. I think it was actually during the crash, because his leathers came open. He has a thing about getting his leathers open, as we know. But yeah, his leathers came open, and I don't. Either he lost his chest protector, or the chest protector wasn't there, and he ended up with a rash. But yeah, I think also being dumped off by the marshal also didn't help. So.
And by the way, when I spoke to Scarlett last night, she said she'll send you a text message soon. So she'll be in touch.
Promises.
Yeah, don't worry about it. As you mentioned Aprilia, Dave, let's get onto this, because we resisted the opportunity to do like an emergency podcast last week, because we've talked enough about the Jorge Martin dynamic in MotoGP, but there was a significant kind of step, I guess you could say, with the release of his statement, and by all intents and purposes an indication that, or a statement that he's going to be leaving the Aprilia team for 2026. He subsequently showed up at their All-Stars Day celebration for riders and all things Aprilia at Misano. He wasn't supposed to ride, but ended up getting on a bike, hence the reason why he didn't have his usual lid and leathers. What do we kind of make of this? I mean, a few days after the fire has been lit by Martin to a more intense state, what's our kind of thoughts on this, Dave? What do you reckon is going to happen next?
It was really interesting. The statement was very, very clear. It was, basically, I'm leaving at the end of 2025 unless Aprilia can find a way to give me a chance to assess the competitiveness of the bike. But it really does. I genuinely think that he thinks that the bike is cursed because he's had nothing but bad luck this year. So. Yeah, I think he has severe doubts. I actually think that reading some of the interviews with Jorge Martin, and also seeing some of the photos and seeing his behaviour there, I think it did him good to actually go to the Aprilia All Stars event, to see the fans, also to see the reception by the fans who were, not booing him. They were chanting "Stay, stay," which I think is again. A really positive. It makes him feel sort of welcomed and welcome, and I think that's going to help his mind. His biggest problem is just between the ears, because it's been such a dismal, difficult, miserable time that anything that affects his mental state is going to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the comments made by some of the Aprilia personnel, I mean, they seem slightly optimistic. Maybe you could say blindly optimistic in the face of what has kind of gone over the past month or so. But yeah, Massimo Rivolo was certainly of the impression that seeing all those fans would take the discussion to a different level, as he told GP1, who were there at the All-Stars event. Max Biaggi also said something like, the last thing hasn't been said. You never know what the future holds. Again, to GP1. So, they seem to be holding out hope, and their reaction to Jorge's statement was interesting in that they just said, Jorge, we're waiting for you. That was their official line. Not really addressing what Martin had said in his kind of statement, and what seems to have triggered this kind of reaction from him. So I agree with Dave. It's hard. I mean, Martin in the statement said, I'm going to leave at the end of the year, so it's very hard to see him going back on that.
Yeah, but there was an unless in there. Then the unless was unless we can adjust the contract so I get another chance to evaluate the performance of the bike.
It does seem like an intent, rather than a firm decision, like you say, Dave. I mean, we can start reading into the semantics of particular words. But, at the moment that Martin appears again in MotoGP, I mean, he did it covertly in Le Mans, but when he sort of appears wearing an Aprilia t-shirt and cap, then he's going to be asked incessantly about this subject and what he's going to do. Of course, if he signs for somebody else for 2026, but, he will be racing for Aprilia at some point in 2025 because he's going to get better. I think there was also a news story on Speed Week that he's going to actually have a test, or he's urging Aprilia to conduct a private test under these sort of new rule parameters that riders returning from physical problems can get some bike time. I just wonder, whether we can actually see Martin fulfilling 2 years of this deal. And I think a lot of our discussion in WhatsApp groups and the comments that we were making to each other last week were, is his movement particularly fair? I mean, there were some people that sided with the rider portion of it, saying short careers. I don't agree necessarily your view that he thinks it's cursed, Dave. I think, riders, okay, they are superstitious, from the ones that we know and we've spoken to, but it seems a bit hokey if he thinks that the RSGP is some devil that cannot be tamed and wants to throw him off at every opportunity, especially when it's just won a GP, in pretty difficult conditions in Silverstone. I think, we have gone beyond the point of no return, but who's to say? I mean, Martin might win a couple of GPs yet at the end of 2025.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think from Aprilia's point of view, they believe that before this whole discussion about the clause and whether it was right to extend this kind of stay of execution, let's say, to allow Martin to decide whether he continues or whether he confirms for 2026. I think Aprilia are maybe of the opinion that this was decided before then, that Martin wanted out, and this was being used potentially as just an excuse for him to try and find a way to a different manufacturer. It's a really difficult one. I've actually been speaking to a few people. It was interesting at Silverstone, just the sort of the breadth of the opinion. Some people really thought, Martin is being so inconsiderate and just a bit of a child, impetuous. He hasn't even given the Aprilia a chance, and I can see that he hasn't. And he's not given it a chance because of his own mistakes, his own fault has led to this situation where he's injured.
Yeah, that's where my opinion tends to fall more.
Right. But then there's this other side of the argument where you think, well, it is a short career and it's a ruthless place, the paddock. As we know, we see manufacturers treating riders as disposable entities. And
Aprilia even.
Exactly, Aprilia in years gone by. And you have to sort of look at it from his point of view. I mean, if you are looking right now at who is likely to be more successful in 2027 MotoGP between Aprilia and Honda, who are you hedging your bets on? I mean, judging by the resources at disposal, the size of the factories, the way Honda has kind of managed to turn its fortunes around in the last 6 months or 10 months, I mean, I'm saying Honda are the more likely to get back to the top of MotoGP before Aprilia.
You're nodding, Dave.
If you're Martin looking at this, I can understand why you would come to that conclusion and why you would think, you know what, I'm doing it.
Completely agree. I mean, like, Honda is clearly the better option. I mean, my politics are such that I will always side on the side of the worker rather than the company. So that sort of colours my view of all of this. But
or the agitator, you mean, Dave? Which one is the agitator in this equation?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why I'm wearing Pinko headphones. Anyway, the point. Yes, Martin did bring a lot of this on themselves. To me, the thing is, Aprilia could have really just swept the whole thing under the carpet. They could have avoided all of the whole PR thing by just sort of by playing Martin along a little bit, if you like, by saying, sure, of course, yeah, of course. If you come, we're open to changing the contract. These are the conditions. It'll be a little bit difficult. Obviously, it's going to be much more difficult for us to find a replacement if you decide to leave. So you're going to have to, you make the decision much more immediate. You try and influence the decision a lot more in your own way. But by apparently, if we're to believe Martin's camp, basically refusing to change the contract, they're forcing Martin to make a decision, one way or another. What they really wanted was to play it along, to push, to push that out, because even Honda's patience is going to run out at a certain point, and there will be other. There'll be other things, and of course, if Martin does go to Honda, then all of a sudden we've got a completely explosive rider market on our hands.
Yeah, but just very quickly, I mean, if Martin was using it as an excuse, then there's no kind of PR twist that you could use to shake that up. He's walking in there and saying, "Cheers, lads, I'm off."
Yeah, but if he's using it as an excuse, then you can say that. Then you can say, "Look, we acquiesced to his demands, we gave him everything he wanted, and yet he's still leaving. What a turncoat! It makes him look very, very. It makes him look very, very different."
Yeah, I mean, again, from Aprilia's, I think if you're Aprilia and the situation about the clause.
Don't sit on the fence, Neil. Just say from your point of view. Come on, you're giving the rider, you're giving the team. What does Neil Morrison think?
I completely understand what if Martin has decided that Honda's the better option. I completely understand that, and in a way, I sort of respect the ruthlessness of it. The top figures in the sport have always been absolutely ruthless, and maybe they haven't had something like this where it kind of appears so messy in the past. But yeah, you're always looking out for number one. Number one comes at the forefront of everything else, whether you upset a few people along the way. Martin got out of his KTM contract and went with Ducati in 2021. Was it the right thing to do? I mean, look at the results. He won a world championship in MotoGP. Brad Binder,
was it the right decision for the reigning world champion to have walked away from KTM back in 2021? Let me think about that one.
Well, it's stay in hospital for about 3 weeks first.
Well, yes, yeah, but it's a small price to pay for the number one plate.
Yeah, I think Aprilia's point of view as well is potentially that someone like Massimo Rivola is quite an understanding guy. I mean, he's shown publicly a sort of a real loyalty to Martin in the face of these repeated injury issues. You look back at 2020 when Andrea Iannone was essentially out of action because of a drug test. Rivola and Aprilia were at some points even beyond reason, unflailingly loyal to the Italian, much to their cost, because at the end, Iannone was banned for 4 years and Aprilia were left with a bit of egg in their face. So it's a guy that maybe if Martin had come to the table and said, look, can we just extend this a little bit? You maybe get the impression that Rivola is the kind of guy that would say, okay, that's something we can talk about or we can consider. But yeah, the crux of it still for me is that you're weighing up these things and you're thinking who's going to be faster in 2026 and 2027, and the kind of trajectories are indicating that Honda would be your best bet.
So to clarify, Neil, who's in the right and the wrong here?
I think Martin is being slightly impetuous and twerpish, but I also kind of understand the ruthlessness if he has made a clear-cut decision.
Dave, Has this been good or bad for MotoGP, considering we're talking about the reigning world champion?
Well, that's exactly it. We're talking about the reigning world champion again. You know, it's generated lots and lots of column inches. It's something for people to pick sides. And the interesting thing is that if you read the comments on all sorts of places, there are people coming down on both sides. There are genuinely two different ways of looking at it. And I think this has been good. You know, like, I don't care what they write about me as long as they spell my name right. It's in the P.T. Barnum sense of publicity. I think it's been good because it means we're talking about it. And again, we're talking about the championship, because otherwise it is a bit of a Marquez show. I mean, fortunately, we had a fantastic race in Le Mans. We had a fantastic race in Silverstone, two really, really great events. But yeah, it keeps us it keeps us thinking about what could happen and what is happening. So yeah, no, I think it's been good.
I like how you framed it, Dave. If you support Martin, you're on the side of the worker, you're a socialist. If you come down on the side of Aprilia, you're a greedy capitalist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Up the workers.
Okay.
Up the million. Let me be clear about this. Up the millionaire workers who are leaving to be paid, many, many millions more at a different factory. Obviously.
Yeah, it's a hard life in Andorra. Slums are plenty.
That's right. Up the tax dodging workers.
Before we move on to the next clause of this particular podcast, a swift reminder that we're backed by renthor.com. If you have a street bike and you're after some new accessories, particularly bars, grips, flywheels, anything you fancy to upgrade your ride, then head to renthor.com. There's a fit my bike option, so you can customize exactly what motorcycle you have with what you need. So it couldn't be easier. We're also supported by Pole Position Travel. So if you're considering a trip to a World Superbike round or a Grand Prix in the rest of the 2025 schedules, then have a look at polepositiontravel.com and use the code PPOD25X, and you'll get a small discount courtesy of listening to our inane babblings. So Pole Position Travel, thanks for the support from those guys. Moving on, Dave, you were just talking about Honda, well, we were generally, I guess. And, as you mentioned, the rider market, because Jorge Martin, if he is already starting discussions, spare a thought for his Andorra-based management company as well, and the amazing amount of work they have to do at the moment, plus, maybe reputation-damaging moves to be made. Then basically HRC have to be kind of throwing their hat in the ring. Alberto Puig said in Silverstone that, he indicated pretty much that Jorge Martin would be of interest to them, but not while he's under contract. So if he has been hoiked around the paddock behind the scenes as someone who's free for 2026, then if you're HRC, do you make a mega money bid for his services? Or do you think, well, this could be another guy that tries the bike, falls off it, maybe does like a Jorge Lorenzo, and then leaves us in a bind as well? I mean, this is also part of the dynamic.
This is a much, much better bike, though. This is not the bike that Jorge Lorenzo got onto. This is a bike with a fantastic front end, lacking in acceleration, lacking in rear grip, but that's fixable. What Jorge Martin wants is a good front end. He wants a front end that he can trust into the corners. So I think that is. I think he would do very well on it. And yes, they've got Luca Marini, who we all know and love, and who is unfortunately in hospital with a very similar injury to Jorge Martin after crashing at Suzuka, puncturing a lung. He is expected to fly back to Italy, I think, maybe next week. Again, if you puncture a lung or suffer a collapsed lung, then you can't fly. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at Luca Marini, who is out of contract at the end of the year. There's a vacant seat, and if you can get a top rider for that, for that seat, then of course you go for it. And there's also Joan Mir, and Joan is an extremely talented rider. He just keeps on falling off, and you can't keep doing that. So again, there is a potential for a major shakeup.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I think if Martin is available, you have to jump on that. He is the reigning MotoGP world champion, and let's face it, we haven't seen Mir perform at that level for the past 3 years. And Luca Marini, as much as we love him, maybe isn't isn't MotoGP world champion material. I think if you're Honda-like and you're really serious about this, there is a potential argument to be made that you sort of just say, you know what, let's sacrifice the sponsorship we get from Idemitsu in LCR. We stick Luca Marini in there because he brings a lot to the project. He's a fantastic communicator. He's a great team player. And he's able to point us in the right direction when it comes to development. Somkhat Chantra, I don't want to be horrible. He's a lovely lad, but I don't think he's quite at MotoGP level.
He was completely out of his depth.
He was nearly 40 seconds off in the sprint at Silverstone. That's more than 3 seconds a lap. Honda, let's face it, are not lacking resources, so they could easily compensate the kind of lack of Idemitsu sponsorship on that bike and just stick Marini in there. And then you've got 4 riders where you're thinking, okay, it's a really good lineup actually. Martin and Mir in the factory team, Marini and Zarco in the LCR squad. That's what I would do if I was Honda.
Yeah, the complication is 2027. How good will Honda be with their 850 and sort of the next phase of development for MotoGP? If we didn't have any kind of rule changes, then you'd say, yes, sign Martin up for 3 years, invest in him, see how he wants to shape the motorcycle. Clearly has the talent to succeed. But then, like I mentioned, he might also be someone who says, I don't fancy this. Perhaps I could, kind of bounce back to a satellite Ducati and start winning again. But also the dynamic for Honda overall is really curious. What do you do with the best rider currently on the motorcycle? You could say he's aging out of MotoGP slightly, but he's performing better than ever. And then how can we accuse brands and companies of being ruthless and then casting, Chantra off? Dave, you said he's hopelessly out of his depth, which is on the money, but he's just come back from arm pump surgery. Don't we have something of an obligation to give him some time, or is it just like a Tom Luthi thing where he's sort of managed to maneuver himself into MotoGP and enjoy the races while they come, mate, because they're short-lived?
For me, Chantra was a very good Moto2 rider. Not exceptional sort of, Pedro Acosta level, but he was perfectly accomplished, did very well. He has not shown any signs of, he just looks terrified on the bike. He just looks so uncomfortable on the bike. When you go out and watch him trackside, he looks completely terrified. He does not look like he's at all understanding what the bike is capable of or capable of pushing the bike to actually get somewhere. Now, he is on a slightly older version of the bike. I think he looks to be on the bike that they started the testing season off in Sepang. So maybe that's something.
Although he's not got a new bike.
Well, there you go. He's now got a new bike, but he's still not really doing anything with it. I don't think. I'm skeptical of the idea of Honda getting rid of the Idemitsu sponsorship. I think that is, in terms of a partnership, it's a much bigger question. But I just want to come back to your point about the 850s, because I think that you do sign someone like Martin for the 850s because everything is going to change. I also think that Honda are going to do better in the 850 era than the European manufacturers, because we're getting rid of the ride height devices, because we are limiting aerodynamics. Also, because we're switching to Pirellis. I think for the KTM is going to be the biggest problem or Pirelli is going to be the biggest problem for KTM, because they have no experience with them, because they haven't been racing in World Superbikes. The other factories have all been racing in World Superbikes with the Pirellis, even though Aprilia hasn't sort of raced in Superbikes for a few years now. At least they have a general idea of what an Aprilia does and how a Pirelli works and how it feels. So I think there are so many open questions. I think the getting rid of the ride height devices is going to return a motorcycle to behaving more like a traditional motorcycle. It's not going to be, you're not going to have these drag bikes which you're using to basically accelerate between corner to corner. And I think that is, I think the Japanese manufacturers have a lot more experience with a normal between question
conventional,
a much more conventional motorcycle. So I think that betting on Honda it's a pretty good bet if you're going into this era with the 850s.
So if both of you were Alberto Puig, I mean, thankfully you're not. I mean, I think that one Alberto in
For
the world
everyone.
is more than enough. Yes. What would you do with Zarco? Because maybe
Keep him.
Throw him a bone and get him to sign
but I mean,
LCR.
maybe behind the scenes, he might be really sort of lobbying for that sort of Castrol HRC full works ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Pay for a couple of new houses in the south of France.
Yeah, exactly. Here's £1 million. Now go away. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing fantastic, mate. The other thing is, he is doing extremely well within LCR. He fits in LCR. He's a satellite rider. He's a brilliant satellite rider. He was brilliant in Pramac. He's brilliant in LCR. He should be. There are some riders who need to be satellite riders because that kind of environment allows them to thrive. And he's really thriving in LCR. And I think it is too much of a risk to move him out of LCR into a factory team where there's a lot more pressure, a lot more exposure, completely different environment, a completely different approach to racing, which I think would be detrimental. You're giving me all the parts. You keep throwing the parts at him. Johan, you're really important to us. We need to get your input on this or this or this. You involve him more in the testing program, which you can do. So yeah, you show him a lot of love and you throw some money at him and you leave him in LCR.
Lastly on this, and I kind of asked it before, but now I want a verdict from both of you. If you're thumbing the HRC checkbook, do you really trust to make a big investment in Jorge Martin? And I think it's a fair question after the episodes that have happened with KTM and Aprilia.
They were throwing 25 million a year at Marc Marquez. They're literally still, they're coming out ahead even now for what they were paying him. They can easily afford to pay Martin 8, 9, 10 million, whatever. And it won't make an impact on them. It's a massive company. Yes, it is also, budgets are not completely limitless, but they can afford to throw money at him. But again, you throw money at him with clauses. You've got him for 2 years. If you sign him now, you've also got and you're partnering in with Joan Mir. It's 2027 where Mir's contract runs out at 26. Maybe you stick a Costa on the bike.
Yeah, and I mean Martin is going through a lot to make this happen. Much to the detriment of his own image. That shows you a sort of level of commitment to you. If he has got his heart set on the move away and coming to Honda, you could look at it that way. You could also look at the fact that he won the championship with the satellite machine, and everyone in that satellite team for a couple of years lauded his ability to make it his own team. Said that he had a fantastic way of building a team ethic and a team atmosphere around him. Again, slightly at contrast to what's going on currently. But when you look at when he was in a happy place on a sorted package, that is what he can bring to the table. And the fact of the matter is that Honda doesn't have a proven MotoGP world champion in their midst at the moment, and Martin brings that.
The one risk with Jorge Martin is exactly what's keeping him out at the moment: injury. He is injury prone. Now, there's literally nothing you can do about that, and I don't know how you approach it differently. But he does have a tendency to hurt himself and miss a lot of races. So that's the risk.
Just quickly, it's quite bizarre that up until last week we were assuming that HRC would in some way give Acosta enough money to buy himself out of his KTM contract, or in the threat that KTM wouldn't race in 2026, and then he would be in the Honda saddle. But now you have the same manager, with two riders. Maybe if Martin goes and signs for Honda for 3 years, then that closes the door for Acosta. It's all quite sort of complicated, really. Who's saying what and who's moving where, and to the detriment of whoever. But I guess Acosta has time on his side. That's the one great advantage over everybody else.
Yeah, if whispers are to be believed, it's maybe Acosta closed the door on himself with the Honda thing. I mean, that is what some well-respected Spanish journalists are saying. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe not the manager that has caused that door to close for Pedro.
He wants to win now. And you're not going to win now on a Ducati, on a Honda. You want to be on a Ducati so you can start winning races and championships.
Last week, we also saw, people using social media channels to sort of pump out other news. And it's quite kind of typical, really, of the environment that, sort of the World Superbike champion, the leading rider in World Superbike, has around him to announce some news or kind of feed some news, I guess you could say. But Toprak, I mean, it's looking like it's done. He's going to Yamaha. He's going to be on a Pramac M1 for at least 2026. Dave, you've been sort of banging this drum and claiming it's going to be happening for a while. So full brownie points to you. I don't know who you know at Yamaha. Lynn Jarvis, perhaps. But
he's been reading Ivo Schutzbach's articles. That's what he's been doing.
Yeah, valuable sources. There we
AKA
go.
Speed Week.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. And no, I mean, like I've heard this. I've heard this from a few people, and I really believe it's going to happen, and it makes an awful lot of sense. We know that Paolo Pavesio loves Toprak, wanted to keep him in Yamaha's World Superbike team, but Toprak wanted a different challenge. I think it's certainly fascinating. I mean, unfortunately, it's Jack Miller who's got the who has the contract, or whose contract is running out at the end of this year, and I think it's a shame for Jack Miller, because he absolutely deserves. He's clearly the second best rider on a Yamaha at the moment, so he certainly doesn't deserve to lose his seat. But if you get a chance to sign Toprak is a phenomenon. You don't know what you've got. You do know what you've got with Jack Miller. Toprak could be amazing. Will he be? We'll see. I am slightly surprised he isn't coming in for the second in 27, but I think that's more of an age thing. I think he's going to be either 30 or 31 in 2027. So he probably wants to come over before to get some time on the bike, to get some experience on the bike, and to see how that to see how he goes.
Yeah, to step back, I mean, the general view, first of all, is that it's fantastic that a motorcycle racing talent like Toprak is going to try his hand at MotoGP. You know, I think that's been the frustration for riders in that particular series, going all the way back to the likes of sort of Carl Fogarty, involving Jonathan Ray, you know, a couple of other figures that, you know, have been linked with Grand Prix rides in the past. But, you know, when the announcement's going to come, that's also another question. You imagine it had to be quite soon. Yeah, I mean, if Toprak's camp are already speaking about it. But I also thought there was some rumours that it might be Miguel Oliveira who might be making way for the Greek.
I mean, as I understand, well, as I understand it, you know, Oliveira has certain performance clauses in his contracts, and he's not living up to them. Now, part of that is not his own fault, because he's injured. He's been injured through no fault of his own. But also, unlike, I mean, with Jack Miller, you can see he's adapting really well to the bike. He's getting on with the bike really, really well. Miguel Oliveira is not. He does not look like he is. His performance really hasn't improved, but with respect to the Aprilia, he's gone backwards. If anything, he doesn't really look like he's sort of mastered the bike, like he even enjoys the bike. It doesn't really. Yeah, it's not been a happy marriage. So I'm not sure that. I'm not sure that there's much value in Yamaha keeping him. It may be that Dorna want to keep him for the Portuguese market, because obviously he's a massive superstar in Portugal, and it looks like, I mean, you know, the Portuguese TV show send a crew to every single race and spend an awful lot of time covering it. So. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But I mean, if it was me, yes, it's a no-brainer. You get rid of Miguel for Toprak rather than Jack, based on the performances so far.
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, we are talking about the guy that starred in World Superbike for the past 5 years, coming over. I mean, this is the sort of modern day equivalent of Troy Bayliss coming across, or even like Carl Fogarty back in the 90s. We know that was potentially going to happen at one stage, I think at the end of 95 to 96. Never quite did. Bayliss obviously came across and had some decent success, you know, especially in his first year in 2003. And, you know, maybe it's an interesting comparison to make, because we're saying that Toprak might be, you know, a bit too old to make the switch. He's currently 28. I think Bayliss was 34 when he came across in 2003, after winning 2 World Superbike titles. Colin Edwards came across in that same year, and I think he was maybe 29, so roughly the same age as Toprak will be next year. And, you know, Edwards made a pretty good fist out of it. Okay, he was never a champion or anything, but he did, you know, get a factory Yamaha seat and got a whole number of podiums. is Toprak going to be fighting for world championships? I don't know, but I know Steve Inglis is of the opinion that he's certainly got the talent to be top 6 in the MotoGP World Championship. And yeah, you just have to look at what he's been able to do over the last couple of years. He is a very adaptable rider, and he is a rider that just is absolutely on it all the time. I mean, you never really see a race when Toprak isn't giving it absolutely everything. So yeah, I think it's surprising because I didn't think. I mean, it's going to seem strange for him to do a year of Michelin's only to then throw that away and move to Pirellis in 27. But I still think it's a fantastic thing for MotoGP.
Yeah, I think the last 2 riders that came across from the World Superbike paddock were Ben Spies, or very, very successfully, were Ben Spies and Cal Crutchlow. Both of those, ended up winning races. Now, it was a slightly different era because it was much longer ago. But I think there's a chance. But I do wonder because. Well, on the one hand, it's also just a massive loss for World Superbike because Toprak adds so much to that championship. He makes it such an attractive championship. So I think it is sad to lose that for World Superbikes to lose that. I'm not sure how well he's going to do. He's clearly incredibly talented. But a World Superbike machine is very, very different to a MotoGP bike. A MotoGP bike is a stiff lump of metal, much lighter and much more powerful. A World Superbike is much more flexible. There's a lot more flex in all those frames, so it's easier to understand, get closer to the limit. But what Toprak does is absolutely stunning. It's absolutely amazing. The question is whether those skills are transferable, and I genuinely have no idea.
It's also worth pointing out as well that Toprak's fully set in the Red Bull world, and that would exclude his participation in the Monster Energy factory team. With Fabio Quartararo, Alex Rins, as we know, has another year on his deal. Although you could argue, in terms of performance, he could be up with Miguel Oliveira, for the chop, or for exercising one of these valuable clauses that exist in the paperwork these days. But I guess if Toprak does maintain his Red Bull status, then fitting into Prima Pramac would be just the most natural fit.
Well, I mean, the factory Yamaha, the Passa Yamaha team also had Monster Energy sponsorship, and Toprak was told that he'd have to lose the Red Bull if he wanted to join Yamaha, and he turned up at the first test with a Red Bull helmet and full Red Bull sponsorship. So everything is possible. But then again, I think also the Pramac squad is a fantastic team. We know that they won the championship. Pramac are getting full Yamaha factory support. It's a full factory Yamaha bike. There aren't very many true satellite teams in MotoGP anymore, and Pramac is basically a subsidiary of the factory. So you're on basically a full factory team.
One more topic to quickly dip into before we finish the show. But first, the Alpine Styles Paddock Pass Podcast Fantasy League. Where am I sitting? Has anybody got a handle on the standings? Who's currently leading?
I love the way you ask this as if it's magically changed from after Silverstone ads.
Of course.
You're still 2,388th.
Yeah, come on.
You're a mere 430.5 points behind the leader, Ad. So, just with a couple of good picks this weekend and you'll be there. What's amazing is you still have Yamaha as your factory and haven't managed to swap that out for
economics.
For Ducati. Yeah, economics, yes. It's
baby steps, Dave. It took him about 6 rounds to get Marc into his gold team. So, baby steps.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hardly, essential, is it? I mean, I know Marquez is being an expert at saving kind of disastrous scenarios of late, but, I mean, yes, there was a slight problem with the logistics of actually picking and swapping riders around, but it just goes to show how much I really listen when we're doing the Alpine Stars Fantasy League updates when you mention my position, but I live in eternal hope, and anyone who supports crap football teams will know exactly what I mean. But who's actually winning?
Who is winning is a Laura team. They have 1,325 points. Their team, by the way, and this seems to be the most successful team for pretty much everyone, is Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez as gold riders, Joan Zarco and Fermin Aldeguer as silver riders. Ducati is the manufacturer, and Ducati Lenovo as the team. What's interesting is pretty much the entire top of the table have used all 3 boosts so far. So I think that is distorting things. This is one of those. It's actually quite interesting because it does make it more of a strategic thing. Someone gets it's a bit like a tire race. There's a bunch of people who jump out into the lead early on, and then we slowly reel them in. So don't give up hope yet, Adam. You've still got some. Hang on. I checked this. You've got all 3 boosts left, so you could still win this. It's still possible.
So Laura team has gone soft, and Ad has gone hard, extra hard on the rear.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yes, that's right.
I'm still on intermediates, even though they haven't been used in MotoGP for a number of years. So that's
soft, wet on the rear.
Yeah, exactly. And it's absolutely bone dry in about 34 degrees. Yeah.
I live in hope. We've got more than 3,000 players in this league, and we all like to be opinionated and know-it-alls on the Paddock Pass podcast. But who amongst the 4 of us is currently ruling? And we know I'm bottom, but who's top?
Unfortunately, it's Steve, who has 1 point more than Neil with
1 point.
That's right, 1,213.5 points, a mere 111 points behind Laura. Steve is only eight positions ahead. He's still in 13th, 8 positions ahead of Neil. I'm absolutely just about exactly mid-pack at 1,445th.
Mediocre, Dave. Mediocre.
Yeah,
you could be good or shit, but being mediocre is just worse, I think.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. But Steve has used 2 boosts already, so there's both me and Neil have used 1 boost, so there's hope for us yet.
I can sense an Irish grudge match going on here. I think
North versus South. Yeah, this is. Oh yeah, this is a long history in here.
And also, Steve's, in Superbike, and he's just messing around in the Isle of Man. I think you owe it to us and everybody else who follows MotoGP, Neil, to get your shit together and start pulling away from him. Can you do that?
Yeah, I'll try my darndest, but yeah, I think Steve and I have the exact same team, and have had this exact same team for the past 3 rounds, so that makes gaining points difficult.
As I mentioned, we've got one more thing we quickly want to dip into, because we are now into June, and Dave, in a couple of weeks we should get verification on whether MotoGP is going to be owned by Liberty Media, and there's bound to be much more discussion had on this and how MotoGP is going to change. But with the deadline approaching pretty fast, I just wondered if each of us could mention how we think MotoGP will alter in the first weeks, once the stamp has gone down on the papers.
Well, I've just finished reading your chapter on Liberty, and not so much on Liberty, but the interviews that you did with Carlos and Dan Rossamondo and stuff, and absolutely fascinating. And please, for God's sake, buy the book. It's annoying. It's actually irritatingly good, because I think bugger, I should have written that, but you did it better than me already. So that's very, very, very much enjoying it. But what do I think is going? It's a little bit strange that it still hasn't been decided. Beginning of July is when the decision is supposed to be due. It does look like they're making a very, very thorough review of it. What I expect is that they just leave Dorna to run the show, but they put a lot more into the marketing of the series, which is where we're missing. Again, we're missing. Really, we've got this amazing story. We've got Marc Marquez coming back from a massive injury, joining the factory Ducati team. Next to a rider who's already won 2 championships and who narrowly lost out on a third. It's a fantastic story, and the fact that this, arguably one of the greatest comeback stories in all of sporting history, is not all over the papers is a bit of a shame.
I think from my point of view, we'll just see something on the commercial side. I mean, I imagine Liberty Media are going to come in and they've been looking at how Dorna Sports have been running MotoGP for quite some time. And of course, they're not going to change everything from the first day. I think that's pretty common sense when you have an organization that's making a decent fist of generating revenue from a product and a series, they're going to take their time on it. Perhaps the first things we will see are different commercial deals, maybe new kind of sponsors or names coming into Grand Prix, title sponsors, the like. That could possibly be the first thing. And I think most of the paddock are also hoping that there'll be a slightly different view on the promotion and the marketing side, and how social media is used, and how the riders are given more of a face and a platform. I think Dorna have got better at that over the last 2 years, but then maybe there'll be some more freedom in the way that media channels are used to be able to do more, promotion, I guess. That would be the first things that come up. But it's a topic that's on the horizon. It's going to be getting closer and quicker to sort of resolution. So we will keep an eye on it. And if we do hear anything, then we'll impart them through the podcast as we go on. We've got our first paddock note show coming up on Thursday, where we'll try and get a guest on to talk with us. And we put the shows up for free in Silverstone. So if you want a taste of what you can get through being a Patreon subscriber, then just go back through the SoundCloud channel or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see the note shows and the kind of daily offerings that we provide. I guess the last call of duty, guys, is really to give our predictions for the Grand Prix. Neil, is there a name that sticks out for you? Actually, we kind of varied this, right? I mean, we said who's going to finish second.
Well, it is hard to look past Marc, although I do think Alex will be on it. So I think it's going to be a Marquez brothers 1-2, and then I think Zarco could be quite tasty. I seem to remember around Aragon last year was the kind of the start of the kind of mini Honda fight back that we saw at the tail end of 2024. Low grip track, similar to what we saw in Argentina. Zarco was obviously brilliant there. So he's 2 podiums on the bounce. Yeah, I'm going to go with Zarco to make it 3.
Dave, have Honda confirmed Taka Nakagami being in to replace Luca Marini yet? Is that something we're waiting on?
No replacement for Luca Marini. Joan Mir will be the only rider at Aragon. So, no replacement. It's going to be Mir on his own. So there's only 3 Hondas.
So who's your speculative bet for a podium place then?
It's going to be Marcus Brothers 1-2. I think Joan Zarco is a good shout. Honestly, I don't think. I'm going to go with that because I can't see.
Can't go with that. I've gone with that. Mix it up.
Mix up. But you know what? I'll go with Fermin Aldeguer just because he's been just absolutely rock solid. And I think, well, all right, here's a different prediction. I think Pecco Bagnaia is going to have an utterly miserable weekend, and I think he's going to come away with a handful of points.
I don't know. I think he might turn it around. I think they might find some sort of magic solution, and it's a good track for him. So I think Bagnaia will be on the podium in some guys.
Go on, Ed. Expand.
What do you mean? In third place, perhaps.
Okay. Okay.
There you go. I mean, it's not very exciting, but
he's going to fix it. He'll fix it in Mugello, and all of a sudden he'll come back with a roaring blaze of glory. It's a much better story than in Aragon.
Well, we're going to be talking about tyres, we're going to be talking about temperatures, and we're going to be talking about grip. They're going to be the 3 big discoveries, and whoever works that out quickest on Friday is going to be straight in for the hunt for trophies. So it doesn't really take too much of a genius, but who knows what kind of conditions we'll discover at Motorland. That's all to come. In the meantime, Dave, Neil, thanks ever so much. Dave, best of luck with Scarlett. I hope she's doing all right. And we'll be back with our note show on the Thursday. Thank you for listening, everyone.